Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. I'd like to talk to you about mind and heart-mind coherence and healing. As I was coming through a divorce a few years ago and needing to deal with recall of some childhood trauma and then the trauma of a divorce and all kinds of things splitting out, splitting off, and breaking off and exploding in my world, I was left with a whole lot of areas of wounding and just huge emotional need for healing on many levels. And I had found, I'd spent about 15 years in therapy, all kinds of stuff in mental health, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And in that 15 years of mental health and going to therapy and stuff, I found that I really had some trouble with understanding, how is it that I'm healing childhood trauma? And every time I went to a therapist or a doctor or whatever, any kind of a group setting, I'd say, well, how is it that we're healing? I've journaled a million pages and I really don't feel any better about this. I want to feel better about it and I'm willing to journal. I've journaled a million pages, how is it that I'm here and I still don't feel better? And I've, put my hands in paint and I've done all this. I've done a whole bunch of hands-on stuff, should have been somatically, healing by now, right? Shoulda. And it really doesn't feel any better. I still feel as victimized, as angry, and quite ticked off that I'm still here and I'm this many years older, and it's been that many years. And then I start feeling guilty and ashamed that, well, I should be healed by now. I've been through 15 years of therapy. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? That's a biggie. And it eats away and steals the identity and the self-esteem to the degree that, I was just a mess and could not figure out, what is truly wrong with me. I have all these diagnoses that tell me what should be wrong with me, and I'm taking a million medications that are supposed to mitigate all these symptoms and stuff, and I'm going to therapy and I'm doing all this stuff here, and yet I really am more miserable than ever. And so as I was going through a divorce about 5 years ago, and all this recall of terrible things and, families breaking apart and marriages breaking apart and, people are coming and going and there's emotional things, therapy became less important. On a very specific thing that happened in a therapist's office, I got the message of, yeah, you need to leave this office and don't come back, and just don't, not now, maybe not ever. However, you got to separate and stop listening to everyone. And that kind of scared me a little because my cocoon, for my wounding had been in traditional therapy, and I'm not knocking it a bit. If it's working, please don't stop doing anything that's working for you. And please don't take my advice because I'm not a doctor or a therapist, either one. I'm just relating my own anecdotal evidence from me personally. If it's helpful, great, and whatever's working for you, please don't stop that. Share your technique if you care to. But what ended up happening was I started moving through some understandings in my spirituality, that in spirituality, I was given the opportunity to learn how to forgive. And, I couldn't quite resolve things with the forgiveness issue in spirituality. And I couldn't quite reach the healing thing with all these techniques that were given to me of journaling and, do collages and do art and, poetry and dancing and, do all these things. I couldn't quite resolve it. I'm like, how am I supposed to heal? And as this marriage was exploding all over the place and people were losing their minds and, just showing me all kinds of very ugly things that were causing even more trauma, I remember having a conversation with God, myself, with my guides, whoever was listening, like, hello, I got a 911 on this because I just left a therapist's office and I'm not doing that anymore for now. Then there's got to be something else. Hello, Sacred Cow, could you introduce yourself? What do I listen to and how do I reach some sort of resolution with this, that I can't keep seeing these new phases of, really horrible behavior and more trauma while I'm dealing with old trauma and new recall of old trauma that I didn't know happened. And how am I supposed to do this and deal with all the personalities that are just going off the wall with, a 30-year engagement, a 30-year tour of a marriage breaking apart is going to cause some shifts and some rifts and some real, possibly bad behavior when it all cracks apart. And it did, on everybody's side, not just other people. I was exhibiting some, unpleasant stuff too, mostly the what is happening here, and just really losing my grip on reality. And because I did not wish to go into a non-reality with that and then have somebody else dictate my world from there, can't lose my beans on this. It's going to get handed over to somebody else called doctor, and no thank you. I don't want any of that. I don't need conservatorship, nor do I want any of that mess. It's been messy enough already. I don't want any of that, so I got to get a grip. Can you answer real quick? And what I got was, okay, we're going to need to do therapy and healing emotionally in a brand new way. It's not going to look like anything that you've ever done before. Cool. I'm into that. I'm into shift and move and shake it and bake it. Let's do it. Just let's get it there, that it's meeting my needs, and that it's getting me to some sort of healing and some sort of getting to be able to deal with reality and not lose my mind, not throw up, not, pee my pants or go, oh God, I can't handle this. I can handle this. I used to be a paramedic. I've seen some things, I just needed to turn that whole thing into my own life and say, yeah, this is the worst behavior I've ever seen. Consider it the worst accident scene you've ever seen, the worst, most goriest, disgusting, blah, blah, blah. And then think about it emotionally, that, oh, this is the most emotional abuse and emotional, devastation that I can possibly imagine. Here it is. And expect that it's a level 5 trauma at all times, at least for now. If that's what you have to. And that's what I had to do, is just assume that the worst is the worst, that you're going to see the worst. And it wasn't that I was looking to manifest it. It was that it's recognized that that's what's here. And that was the first thing with healing, was stop being in denial about just how awful it is, how awful people are behaving, how awful they've acted in the past, how awful you've acted in the past. I mean, all of it, not just putting it out there to somebody else. It's their fault. Look at your own. And not a comparative study, that, well, I did this better. Get the ego on out of it and just start looking at things with the raw, bald, bold-faced facts. That's it. That's all we're doing here, is just fact-finding tour of that's what this is. And so for a while, it was really about documenting in my mind, sometimes on paper, sometimes making video, whatever it was, to just, these are the facts of this situation. My assessment of it is irrelevant and unimportant for the time being, because there's too much emotional baggage attached to it. So how can I do that? 707, just write things down in a very sterile environment. And I didn't share it with anybody. It wasn't like I was going and telling a story somewhere. It was a matter of documenting it somehow that was legitimate to my whole mind, that, okay, that is what's there. That's the raw data of it. There's no denying that, okay? And then start putting in some of those emotional things. Well, what I found was that the traditional therapies of journaling and talk therapy and things like that, what was happening was I wasn't reaching resolution or healing about things, because I wasn't necessarily talking to someone that I could reveal that information to, that was holding that in a safe place, that didn't come back with kind of some irrelevant information, or, some sort of a technique that really wasn't very helpful, or something that brought their bias into it. And because I'm an intuitive and an empath and autistic, it was very apparent to me. And I'm then trying to figure out how I can accommodate the fact that this person doesn't get me. They're already off on whatever their bullshit is about this, their stuff. I was self-aware enough to know that was what was happening, but I needed the next layer of, I got to get past being self-aware to know what your issue is about my issue, and neither one of us are reaching healing, and you're not helping me, and it's making it worse and wasting my time, which doesn't go over well with, people who are supposed to know more, when you start saying those kinds of things. And so I learned to just, not say them, and yet it wasn't bringing the healing. So what did bring the healing, though, is being able to speak those things out. Once I got done with the clinical, the raw data of it, this is just putting all the facts down, Kate. You're just writing down facts, and then look at it kind of in that comparative place, without the shame and without the ego and without all that stuff, as much as possible, that, wow, yeah, there does seem to be a whole lot. This is very heavily weighted on, opposition side, if you will, that no, I wasn't, guilt-free. No, I wasn't just an innocent victim. However, I also was not manifesting. I brought this to me. It was in my Akashic records to do it this way. I asked for all this abuse and all this bullshit. I don't personally agree with that whole thing, about it. Yes, I was there, and so energetically I was aligned to be there. However, I don't believe that it had to be that way. That's just where I stand with it, and it's never changed in one time that I've been putting it to the divine of, hey, there's a lot of different, stuff on this, and people really got some hardline positions about how the story is already written before you get here and astrologically, and that's about the sovereignty of being in 5D, is that no, we get to decide our own story, and we can break contract, and we can break out of paradigm and, any understanding. It's a matter of how much willingness do we have to energetically align with a new paradigm and a new understanding that doesn't include any of that. And it did not have to be the way that it was. However, it was the way that it was, and even if I'm wrong, it really doesn't matter, because I still have to pick up the pieces and move forward today, 10-10. So what's the new way? And so it was being able to bring in the equation of, okay, it does seem to be heavily weighted in this direction, that the opposite side went completely bananas, and there had already been trauma and abuse that was completely over the line. Abuse of any kind is already over the line, and then with the divorce process, and multiple people just went completely bananas with their behavior. I mean, it just really set them off in some bad areas of places that I did not choose to reciprocate or play along with. However, it still happened, and it caused trauma, and it caused a lot of areas of feeling very wounded. So once I could slide into that position of being able to see that, yes, it isn't just you, playing victim. You were in fact victimized, however it is that you arrived there, whether the story is written or not, who cares? You were victimized. You did victimize other people in your life. However, it's just, in this particular instance, at that particular time, the wounding we're talking about, baby, is, is heavily weighted. 11/11 just passed. Thank you. So how do we deal with that? Well, okay. Then I started talking to my guides about, why would it be that way? Well, sometimes it's that way because we're light workers for starseeds, we're people, chosen ones, however we identify, where we do come and we have a very forgiving and loving nature and a kindness about us, and we don't always see. And narcissistic personalities or abusive personalities or overbearing, dark, demon, however you identify the bad guy, in your world or the world, however it is that you do that, call it that, and insert word there, that is not always identified by people who are very innocent, gullible, naive, which I was willing to trust people at a level that, that did not deserve to have that level of trust, it really didn't, not ever. And being pounded with the idea through the old paradigm that even though my gut is inside going, I really think I can't trust you. I felt that as a child. I always knew that, yeah, there's some, that's not right. And yet the old paradigm says, well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this title, I'm your mom, I'm your dad, I'm your grandma, I'm your sister, I'm that, insert whatever word, has the most power, and then go from there about how it is that we can get very easily twisted into believing those stories. It's very common. It is the old paradigm. It's just that when we have highly sensitive people, indigos, crystal babies, empaths, intuitives, however we're identifying, when we are very sensitive to that, it does hit differently. And because I was so gullible and naive, I didn't believe the worst about people, and therefore the threshold of tolerance was, pretty high for, what would shock me, until, I started speaking up for myself. And then that threshold just zoomed up into, oh my goodness, because it had never had to be that level. I never really, put down a hard line for realsy. I was codependent, extremely codependent. I had been told to be, taught to be, and reared to be, as in, most people on the planet. That's the old paradigm. But as we're shifting into the new paradigm, when I started putting boundaries in, they really upset people. Then that tolerance, it narrowed down, like, oh God, because it shot up into bad behavior almost instantly. It never had to go there because I never not trusted. I never went through a period of not really trusting. I just kept telling myself that it was me. I was broken. I needed to heal myself. I needed to forgive others. I needed to do a whole lot of Christ-looking stuff or therapy-looking stuff. And I was still too broken to get there, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here questioning, why do my insides feel so creepy. Why do I feel so, anxious all the time? It's because my intuition and my insights knew exactly that heart-mind coherence thing is way out of balance. There isn't any. You've got heart-mind issues. You've got the cognitive understanding, the cognitive dissonance is there, that something isn't right here. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. And yet I'm hearing that I'm the one that's wrong about this. Let me see if I can plunder around, get inside, pop the lid on this and, get that trunk open and see if we can dig up in it, get all up in the hood. And it really wasn't about me. And in many instances about this is a broken system. And I'm noticing it because I'm highly intuitive, and that's a special skill that I have. So it's not really about me personally or other people personally necessarily on that level. It's about being able to identify that there's a whole lot of incongruence here, cognitive incongruence, and it's leaving me feeling the shame and the guilt and the weirdness, and I'm not healing, and why not? And that's why, is because that system keeps it in place like that. It's a very ego-based system, almost exclusively ego-based system, where we're not going to want anybody to break away from this codependent thing. We're just going to, you try to break away and everybody's going to go and play. And it's going to start war if you actually, do in fact break away, and people lose their minds. They really do, especially at times when we're highly challenged, vibrationally and with our frequency. Things are changing. Every portal we have, every planetary movement, every alignment is a brand new assignment in the, you're going to lose your mind or you're going to pull it in line. And many, many people, because they're not breaking free of the matrix, they have no interest in it, they're continuing to lose their mind at greater and greater levels. But it still left me with, okay, the greatest devil I have is that I don't want to hate anybody. I certainly am done with hating myself about what's wrong with me. There's nothing really wrong with me. Then what's wrong with me is figuring out how I deal with all the years that I thought something was wrong with me, that I was in fact noticing there's a lot of broken here, and kept telling myself a terrible message, and gained a lot of weight, had eating issues, had medication issues, had addictions, had all kinds of codependency, all kinds of stuff. And I found that the greatest way that I could help myself was getting my mind and heart coherence going. And how does that happen? Well, it happened for me by spending a lot of time with my guides and with spirit that helped me to put this into a context of my nerd self can see the hard data on it. And then when it started moving into the emotional need to look at stuff and go, oh yeah, that was incredibly hurtful. Because I'm not saying that, my nerd side is going to somehow be able to take over. That turns me into a robot with no feelings. And that doesn't work. Not for me. I'm not able to do it. Some people can very well. Lots of people can. Robot hard. Agent Smith everywhere they go. But that's not me. I can't do that. I'm not able to separate away from feeling all of the feels that I feels. So, I'm going to actually need to be able to get in those feels and bring, my data self and my nerd self more into alignment. However, I'm not going to be in either one of those places and have that be the only place that I stay. It needs to be right here balanced. And how can I do that? With mind and heart coherence means that I understand my heart has its own brain. It has its own, and it really literally does. It's called the little brain. And it has so many nerve endings and so much innervation that sends messages all over the place to the brain about what to do, how to feel. And so when people talk about being lovesick and things like that, we really literally do have feeling in our heart. We have a whole lot of innervation. And the way that it works, the system works, is that it's sending impulses and responses and electrical messages to the brain, okay? And it's giving so much information to the brain, whereas a lot of neurons send messages out to fingers and toes and things like that. The heart sends messages to the nervous system, to the brain, for how to respond and feel. And so if we learn how to take a situation, once we've got it a little organized and we've got our nerd self, put everything nicely papered, got it all listed out or whatever, or however it comes to us, if we can pick a situation where there's some real hurt there, that was really very, very hurtful situation. How can I reach some healing with that? Get that heart brain involved instead of just the mind involved, instead of just the heart involved with the heartache and the heartbreak, instead of just the mind going, yeah, that was just that. How can we bring those closer together to align those? Is that to think about that situation, grieve however long it takes to grieve, because we can't bypass that. There's no spiritual bypassing to stuff, as much as spiritualists like to talk about healing and love and light, it didn't work for me to throw some love and healing light on it and leave it at that. There needed to be the expression of all the feelings that came with it, which was rage, grief, sadness, loss, abandonment, whatever it was. Feel those. It's a matter of that I'm here to feel those and heal those, not just feel them indefinitely. It'll need to be for however long it takes to get through them. However, to just stay there with the intention that I'll just stay here because I'm just here. The intention is I need to grieve for however long it takes in this session. And this is a controlled evolution. It's a controlled burn. We're doing a controlled landing here. We're not just going into, crash and burn. We're going to take this. And that happened with my guides and my spiritual understanding that, okay, we're marrying this up with a therapeutic intervention that HeartMath Institute, by the way, I'll put their information in. They can help you with this a little bit more to build up the exercise. But to build up that coherence, I need the structure of science mind, and I also need the allowance that this is going to need to, a controlled descent doesn't always look nice. A crash and burn looks terrible generally, but if we need an emergency landing and it's a controlled one, that's going to have some, possible broken legs and some, busted shit. However, it's still going to be better than just going, oh, well, take my hands off the wheel and off we go and just let whatever happen. No. So we're with spirit saying, okay, this needs to be controlled or managed by spirit. So I'm going to grieve. And allow that space to grieve and get to the point of, all right, maybe now I can introduce the idea of whatever the feeling is. If you've started with rage, if you started with whatever, go through the series of emotions around it. And then arrive at that point where, okay, I'm ready to start this new idea, this new technique of how I can get some heart coherence, where all of those nerve endings, all of those, raw places that are so hurting, about this particular thing that I'm thinking about, or that particular person, or whatever it is, how can I bring some soothing and some softness and some kindness to that, get my mind involved with remind me of a time where things were much better, where things were sweeter, a dream I once had, a relationship that wasn't codependent, an experience in nature, somewhere, something that was so soothing, an animal, a stuffed animal, something that brought me so much comfort and so much satisfaction, so much feeling of I'm loved and I'm wanted and I'm needed in this environment right here to just be me and nothing but me. Some of us, we don't have, a whole lot of people involved in those memories. And some of us might even struggle to come up with a memory, which spirit is very good. Spirit is very good as we continue to work forward. We'll either be brought those memories from some point in time when it actually was like that in some situation, or it will build into our awareness what it is to truly be in that loving space, because energy that is in those ascended realms, of loving presence is truly accepting of us wherever we are, come as you are. I'm not promising anybody that the first time they open up their heart and, I've tried this, and the first time, I didn't reach that peace. Chances are very great, it's not going to be to that point of feeling completely at peace at the very first time. It could be, I'm open for miracles. However, the average probably would be that it's a learned skill. And so if we do have a memory, though, if we have very favorite animal or something, that's to me one of the ones that really worked for me. At the time that I was going through some of the most severe stuff, I had an animal that just was so connected with me, a cat, my old guy Tai Tai, who was 1,000,000 years old, and he had the most terrible, stinky tuna breath ever. But I was his armpit bitch. When it was time to, that he wanted to get in my armpit, then that was what I did. I answered that because he was getting older, and, I realized that, he's helping me to get into alignment with how I'm going to be able to not use just this experience right now in this very moment, but to this day there are times whenever I'm grieving about something that I remember that connection with him and how sweet it was that I didn't care about his tuna breath. He didn't care about me snotting and boogering and raining tears down on his head. And that we were there connecting literally in my armpit, with on the left side, that my heart is there. I can feel him purring. I can feel his heartbeat sometimes. And I just know he would look up, and he would, make his terrible, gnarly old guy sound, and it was so, so precious and so sweet and innocent, that relationship and that connection, that I used that a lot, in that heart-mind coherence, that, oh, I'm knowing that my heart is an innervated organ. It's sending so many messages to my mind. It thinks its own stuff. It has really its own little brain going. And this is scientifically, I'm not just making stuff up. That's kind of like neurofeedback, by the way, if you want to look it up, but I'll put some information down below, that it's feeding information to my brain. And my brain is the one that's really going to be repatterning some of those thought patterns and that old programming, and repatterning in what soothing and comfort and what true feeling of safety and love, genuine love is. If I've never really known that or felt that without a whole lot of, other stuff, I'm talking about the purest form of that I can find. Once I get through that painful experience and I've reached a point where I'm done grieving, then I bring that idea in that, oh, this is the soothing. And I tie it back to that memory of that did happen. That's where science comes in and starts getting a little hard line with those things did happen. They did happen. They were horrible. They did not, go well. That wasn't fair. You were victimized. However, here, you're in this very beautiful experience with this animal, this love, this pure thing, this pure relationship that is so kind and so compassionate on both sides of it. And neither one of you wants to be doing anything else but this 25-25. And so even now, he's been dead now for a couple of years. He passed away at 1900. And I miss him still. And yet, what ends up happening is that if I'm grieving about something else, that's just tapping me weird, he'll come to my mind, and I know that's him saying, hey, let's go. And I lie down sometimes and I recall that, so that I have that basis that I've finished grieving. Or if I can marry it up at the same time, that, I'm doing this with Tai, he's got me, I can cry. However it is that it builds up in my mind, I establish that feeling again because it's been already established by doing this kind of work. And when we're starting out with that can be so helpful in helping us to open up that, dialogue with our own heart, our own mind, and getting that cognitive dissonance taken care of. And there isn't really too much room for any of the blame or the shame or any of that other stuff. And it does take, sometimes some discipline to be able to do that. But it's really about recalling, when do I remember feeling so much compassion, even if it's for someone else, that I felt that compassion, that I felt kindness, that I felt genuine appreciation, that I felt genuine gratitude for something. And how can I recreate that? If I've never even had that memory, then, I'm going to need to pray and, start building that. But most of us, we can find a time. It's a matter of moving past monkey mind and old programming that would tell us that won't work, or, whatever. That's just the ego trying not to die. And, 5D doesn't have any room for the ego. There's no ego identity in 5D. There's no room for you. There's no room at this end. You got to go. And it doesn't like it. It's just programming, though. It's not who we are. It's not our identity. And ego is not an identity. It takes on the identity of whatever we tell it is, and whatever we build up, based on what the world is telling us we are and what we think we should be. That's all the ego is. It's just a hollow, fictitious hologram that we recreate and remake and repattern and rejigger and refigure and retool and reschool, a million times when we're, trying to mask and be something else, or we wear one mask everywhere and that, we're in charge, whatever level of ego involvement we're into. So if we can meet that place, that's where the best heart-mind coherence can happen, is remembering places of gratitude, appreciation, compassion, kindness. Those don't generally have, if they're truly in their essence of those things, they don't have the ego involved with them. They are a place of vulnerability, of saying, wow, I really appreciate that, or wow, I have compassion for that because I've been through that. I understand that. And wow, that's tough, and kindness, that's a place of vulnerability too, because not everybody receives kindness well. And, yet we still offer the kindness. And that's also where that forgiveness thing can start coming in if we're called to do that. I personally had a hard time with it, and still, I don't, propose that anybody work on forgiveness or not work on forgiveness. It's whatever it is that brings you to that place of peace, kindness, compassion, and gratitude for yourself and others, at whatever level you can do that, in that place of meeting the heart-mind coherence, that my heart is beating and it's absolutely sending out signals that are reaching far beyond just the organ. It's coming to my brain and reminding me that I feel that warm squishy of those places in my memory. And the more I build those memories, I'm going to be able to get back to them faster and actually relate them to other people or to other somatic experiences where I'm in nature, where I'm in dance, where I'm singing, where I'm, reading a poem, where I'm, I don't know, working at my computer, whatever it is, whatever level of it that it is. And the more we do that, the less that we empower the ego to have any comment whatsoever about it, because it doesn't involve the ego. It involves that heart connection with the brain in a way of feeling that we don't need that, ego to comment on it. And when we have that conversation going, we can go back to that feeling. Yeah, just Buddha that and let that go. And that's all discipline. It is all about discipline and training and doing that work. But it came much faster for me to move away from trying to journal my way out of it, or, angry cry, angry angry draw, or do artwork. All of those things were helpful on a level, but they just got me right to a point where I couldn't go any further. I'm like, there's got to be something more than this, that I can, feel better about this and reach a place of peace in my heart, that I just don't want to stab someone in the eye, because I really don't. And yet I was at that level of frustration, sadness, and anger, grief, all of this, and feeling like, where do I go with this? Because I'm not genuinely a baseline beast. I don't like it. I don't even like myself. And then, the self-abuse and self-esteem issues just kind of started to fall away with, you're right, that really isn't your baseline. That's really not what you like to do. That's not where you like to be. So let's find the way that, you can listen and hear this and receive this. And it's about creating those moments with wherever it happens, that it's truly, a pure moment. And it was with my tuna breath cat, and then I remembered dreams that I had as a child, and oh yeah, I remember dreaming that particular dream, or I remembered swinging and, seeing angels in the sky, and, then expanding those moments, Sometimes they would only last for a second or two before my monkey mind got busy. And, it's truly about just rein that puppy in. It doesn't get free rein, now. And it takes discipline. That's all. It just takes discipline and the retraining of the mind. 3113, love mirrored numbers. But it was about going back consistently, I remember that time whenever I was singing. I remember that time, with my stuffed animal, when I just felt so at peace, and growing those moments in my heart and my mind and connecting those two. That heart-mind coherence is huge, and it's what helped me. I'm not saying it's the path for every single person, because every single person won't try it. I've been through a lot of different methods, and that just happened to be what really helps me. And that's what helps me now, is then going into, the mountains, or working with nature elements, or working in some way with an animal, even in my mind, that spirit and that soul and that connection of purity, because ascended realms are absolutely pure. So I know that when I go into that place, once I've established that connection, I can reestablish. It's like having the phone number, to the tree. You have the phone number directly, call that tree. And, it can sound kind of kooky, and that's okay, because even if it's my imagination is a manifestation station, to get in there and be busy with it, because I'm manifesting. Even if I think it's my imagination, it's okay, because it's manifesting that connection with the better feeling. And the heart is a very busy organ that does a whole lot, and it informs a whole lot of places that it's shooting. The vagus nerve is 80%, of messages that are going to the nervous system, then let's innervate that and send those messages in a way that just feels a whole lot better, that feels a lot juicier and a lot sweeter and a lot kinder in those very pure places. So I hope that's been helpful. These are so long. I try to keep them shorter, but yeah, I just blab. So 33, I'm going to go with it and say thank you very much for joining me. I hope that you are well no matter what part of the day you're in, and no matter what you're doing, my friend, get within your skin, because your divine is absolutely fine. And you do have the ability, we do know, even if we really, really have had a rough start and never really, deeply seated any of those fond memories in childhood or anything, our heart does know how to do that work. Some of us, it takes us a little bit longer because we got a little bit more, unganking to do. We got a lot more stuff to chip away, and some of us, it seems like it's nothing, and whatever, it doesn't matter. What is my work to do, and how can I get through most quickly and most exponentially, that I'm not laboring around being, guided to do things by people who really, they don't really have the answer for me. And just because I think they should, I can move on now. And we're going into a new paradigm that says that anything can work and anything does. It's a matter of what anything is for me, and do I have the courage and the faith and the willingness to give it a try when I know that it's driven from right in here, because I do know that my heart already knows, and it can inform my brain better. If my brain's left in charge, you get what you see, which is a whole lot of confused people who would be happy to tell you the right way to do it. And there's 8 billion of us on the planet. I'm pretty sure that, we need to open up the field of possibilities to 8 billion possibilities at a minimum. So take care of yourself, as I said. I hope you have a great day. And I will talk to you again soon, my friends. Be well. Bye-bye.